The Sayward Forest Canoe Route is a breathtaking adventure through the heart of the Sayward Provincial Forest. The 47.4-kilometer route includes 39.3 kilometers of canoeing and 8.1 kilometers of portaging. But don't be fooled, the portaging on this trip takes almost as much time as the canoeing does. If doing the full route, this is the kind of trip you want to treat like a backpacking trip. Otherwise, you will be running each portage multiple times as you ferry your gear. What I love most about the Sayward route is the variety. On this route, you will paddle through magnificent lakes with mountain views, climb over beaver dams, wade through mud, and scramble through creeks. The route is filled with creative swimming spots, including diving platforms, rope swings, and floating docks. There are a variety of rustic backcountry sites and vehicle access rec sites. The backcountry sites are free, and as of 2024, the vehicle access rec sites cost $18 per party. I suggest bringing cash in case you need to camp at a rec site. People complete this route in canoes, kayaks, and on paddleboards. I personally would not want to complete the whole route in a kayak as they are much more challenging to portage. You can use a canoe cart for much of this trip, but there are sections where you have to carry your canoe. We chose to carry our canoes overhead for many of the portages. All of us rented our gear from Comox Valley Kayaks. I didn't get any cell phone service in the park and carried my satellite phone in case of emergency. Although it is a busy area, you are still in the wilderness. Last year we saw a bear on the route. It's important to carry bear spray and secure your belongings. There are not any bear caches on the route. Although this route is beginner friendly, there are still skills you should practice before heading out on a multi-day trip. You should know what to do in the event of a capsize and how to get back into your boat. I've provided our approximate completion times for each section. However, it's important to note that because we were traveling in a large group with varying abilities, your times might vary. In September of 2024, I completed the Sayward Canoe Route with my partner and 4 other friends. Once we turned off the highway, it took us about 30 minutes of cautious driving on a bumpy road to reach Mohun Lake. We fared okay in our 2-wheel drive, low-clearance vehicles. The most popular spot to start the Sayward route is at Mohun Lake Provincial Park. This site has everything you need to get started, including an outhouse and a water source. There are both reserved and first-come first-served campsites if you choose to camp. It's the only potable water source on the route, so be sure to bring a filtration method for the remainder of your trip. You can drive your car down to the beach to unload before parking in the designated area. Make sure to secure your belongings well. Although we put away our electronics and valuables, when we returned we had found that someone had tried, and failed, to steal our roof rack. Once you're ready, launch from the beach and you can start your paddle on Mohun Lake. Mohun Lake was calm and serene, offering stunning views with little noise. However, the winds can pick up, as on any of the large lakes. As you paddle, use your map to navigate and stick to the left to avoid paddling into a bay instead of into Goose Lake. After about a 15-minute paddle, you'll arrive at Goose Lake. This involves navigating a few dead trees in the water. There's a nice island campsite here if you choose to take a break or want to camp for the night. From here, it's time to get ready for the first portage of the day. It took us about an hour and 20 minutes to get from the Mohun launch to portage number 1. The first portage starts at Seagull Bay Recreation Site. Here you'll find a picnic table, room for a few tents, and an outhouse. It's perfect for a snack break before tackling one of the most challenging portages on the route. This 1.6-kilometer portage has some tough terrain. And while you can use a canoe cart, it's easier if you carry your gear on your back to keep the cart light for maneuverability. I counted 5 canoe rests along the way if you choose to carry your canoe. This portage took us about 40 minutes to complete. After finishing the first portage, you launch onto an unnamed lake. The launch is a bit tricky with logs to balance on and mud to wade through. It's a very short 5-minute paddle across this lake. second portage is rocky and rooty, but it's so short that it's not worth using your canoe cart. For us, it was a quick 15-minute trek before we hit the next section. Next up is a beautiful paddle through a creek that leads to Twin Lake. This section is our personal favorite. The landscape is stunning, and paddling through here feels like a true adventure. Be ready to navigate through 3 beaver dams. It helps if someone can get out of the boat to lift it over the dams and stabilize while getting back in. Also, watch for very deep mud in some spots.
Oh! The muck goes deep very suddenly.
After the creek, you'll enter Twin Lake. The paddle across this lake is so peaceful. Be sure to soak in the scenery before reaching the third portage. It took us about 35 minutes to paddle from the creek to portage number 3. The third portage starts at the Twin Lake Recreation Site. It begins on a road, so be sure to watch for the portage markers on the left. This moderate portage starts with an uphill section, but the downhill stretch towards the end makes it a little easier. You can use a canoe cart, but the routes make it a little bit challenging. There are 2 canoe rests that I counted along the way. This portage has pretty forest views and some nice creeks that you can watch for along the way.
Holy crap, look at that toad! Nicer.
It took us about 25 minutes to complete this portage. Once you finish portage number 3, you'll paddle out onto Amor Lake. This lake offers some of the best views of the route, with mountains and forests lining the shores. We chose to camp for the night at Sterling Island Recreation Site. It took us 50 minutes to reach Sterling Island Rec Site. The island is equipped with a makeshift kitchen area and tent pads. The tent pads are a bit worn down, but there are other flat spots to camp. There's a fancy new conveyor belt toilet, and also a pit toilet, or as I like to call it, a poop throne. Someone even built a small diving platform that you can swim out to. We left Sterling Island for another day of paddling and portaging. We paddled for about 25 minutes from Sterling Island to the next portage. Portage number 4 is short and easy. There's a big marker right by the entry with a steep hill, but go right and look for the smaller indicator for an easier exit. Mr. Canoe Head Rec Site is a big backcountry campsite with tent pads, picnic tables, and fire pits. It's such a short portage that we didn't even bother with the canoe cart. We just ferried our stuff over. This took us about 10 minutes. Paddling across Surprise Lake is always a treat. It's small, still, and has beautiful mountain views. After stacking our gear on the logs, we launched, paddling for about 15 minutes before hitting the next portage. Next up was portage number 5, the longest portage of the day. It starts with a steep hill, but once you're up, it's flat and not too rooty. We used the canoe cart for this one. There are 5 canoe rests before you can switch to a gravel road. Watch for the portage signs to hop back on the trail. Although it's the longest portage distance-wise, it only took us 35 minutes. After the portage, Brewster Lake opens up with beautiful views. We stopped for lunch at Brewster Point, a rec site with a sandy beach, big picnic table, and a pit toilet. It's a perfect spot for a swim. After lunch, we paddled to our next portage. All of Brewster Lake took about 1 hour and 30 minutes to paddle. Portage number 6 was a short and easy portage, although there is a fallen tree to scramble over or around. It took us 20 minutes to complete. The next section feels like something out of the Shire, with its meandering creeks. We hopped in and out of the boat, navigating the water and enjoying the beautiful surroundings. After 45 minutes, we made it to Grey Lake. Paddling across Grey Lake was fun. It's super echoey, and we couldn't resist shouting to hear our voices bounce back. We reached the Grey Lake wreck site about 25 minutes later. When we first pulled up to the campsite, the residents said there was no space. I, however, think it's important to be a bit pushy if it's the end of the day and you're getting tired. We got out and looked around. Turns out, at this wreck site, they reserve a site for 3 tents, specifically for people on the Sayward route. It was $18 for the 6 of us. We ended the day jumping off the floating dock. We set off from Grey Lake in the morning. There is some flagging to the left on the portage path, but we launched on the right. We had to navigate some logs to get back onto the lake. Portage number 7. We chose to wade through the rapids between Grey and Whymper Lake for fun and adventure, but honestly, it would have been faster to just take the portage. It took us about 30 minutes to make it to the launch point on the other side of the portage. If it felt like the Shire on the last creek, this one had me channeling my inner golem, scrambling around on the rocks. Whymper Creek is narrow and overgrown, but opens into a beautiful, twisty lake dotted with lily pads. It's a peaceful 20-minute paddle. We skipped Portage 8 and opted to paddle through the Fry Lake Rapids instead, which took about 20 minutes. I hopped out to take a look at the portage, and it was wide, pretty flat, and looked easy to navigate using a canoe cart. The rapids start with a beaver dam to hop over. For both of the rapid sections, we were out of our boats walking our canoe along the rocks. It's rocky and slippery, so be careful. Closed-toe shoes are a must if you choose to do this. After a 45-minute paddle on Fry Lake, we stopped for a snack break at Fry Narrows Wreck Site. It is a great spot for a swim, with a rope swing and a diving platform.
Whee! That was pretty shallow.
Just be careful jumping off the platform, as there's a large stump under the water. The campsite is beautiful, and I'd love to come back and camp here. Lower Campbell Lake is the busiest of the lakes with lots of wreck sites. It's a longer paddle, but you're rewarded with stunning views. It took us about an hour and 20 minutes to get across the lake. The 9th Portage is a wide road that's easy to use a canoe cart on, although there is a steep uphill section. I counted 2 canoe rests along the way, and it took us about 25 minutes to complete. Gosling Lake was a peaceful and quick paddle, taking us only 20 minutes. The 10th Portage is another short one. It took us 15 minutes to walk through and was easy and unremarkable. After a brief 15-minute paddle through Higgins Lake, we arrived at our next portage. The 11th portage felt a lot longer than 400 meters. It's gnarly, uphill, and rooty. It's best to just carry your gear through this one. Good luck using a canoe cart. It took us 35 minutes.
Nominally the definition of gnarly.
Laurier Lake is a short, sweet paddle, taking us only 5 minutes to get across. The 12th and final portage is on a gravel road. Once on the gravel road, watch for the sign for Mohun Lake on the right and the tiny orange diamond. We just carried everything through, and it took us 15 minutes. It took us 10 minutes to paddle to Mohun Island Wreck Site. This campsite is incredible. It has 3 tent pads, 1 with lake views and 2 in the forest. There's a bench, which we used as our kitchen, and a fire pit. The next day, when we paddled around the island, we saw another campsite. As we sat around the fire, we watched bats flit around overhead. Maybe that's why we saw so few mosquitoes on this trip. We wrapped up our trip by paddling the final leg of Mohun Lake. This took 1 hour and 20 minutes. The Sayward Canoe Route really is the trip of a lifetime. We had perfect weather, glorious swimming spots, and even got to enjoy a fire, an increasingly rare luxury. Please feel free to reach out and comment with any questions about the Sayward Canoe Route.